Welcome back viewers, ladies, gentlemen, non-binaries and anyone with ears or other sound detection organs. Hope you enjoy. We are continuing with Going Native, written by Uncle Sealing. Going Native, Chapter 41. It was touching, watching the pair of Shilvati as they hung off of Stace. His skin was pale, his entire body gaunt, but he had a little bit of that glow of health that had been missing before. Askel was tempted to leave them like this, put off his task for as long as possible, but no. The adhesive medical strip had to be pulled off as quickly as possible. When Stace noticed him standing at the door, he grinned. His whole face seemed caught up in the smile, forehead crinkling, human and Shilvati eyes squeezing into squints as his cheeks rose up. Askel, you deserve a hug too. Not the reaction he was expecting, but hey. Free hug. Askel walked to the bed and the Shilvati let the human go enough that he was able to wrap his arms around Stace. Stace reciprocated and, oh, that was nice. Hugs from the warm-blooded were awesome, and his immediate instinct was to just wrap himself tight around the human. He wasn't going to do that, though. It would be undignified and rude to his patient. More arms suddenly wrapped around him from both sides. Askel was trapped in arms and bodies, all warm and soft and... Are you purring? Askel panicked and pulled away, embarrassed. He was worried about being undignified, and now they were going to laugh at him and tease him. I'm sorry, you were just so warm. Stace's smile was pleasant, not teasing at all. It's okay. It's nice to know you can appreciate a good hug. The human patted the bed next to him. If you are cold, there is space. It was very, very tempting. No, I shouldn't. We need to have a serious conversation, and I can't do that if I'm sitting next to you. Every smile in the room vanished in an instant. Askel grabbed one of the wooden chairs and slid it near the bed. Ian climbed over Stace to cuddle up against one side of him, and Ellora sat on the edge of the bed in a position that seemed protective more than anything. Stace sighed. How bad am I this time? He glanced over at the medical monitor. Is this how it is now? The resigned fear in his face was, well. Askel was saddened, but maybe if Stace was expecting the worst, this wouldn't be as bad. Go ahead and grab that cable. Stace stared at him blankly. Trust me. Right where it is connected to your diagnostic pad. Feel those two flat spots. Askel watched as Stace grasped the rubbery cable, slowly tracing it up until he was holding the hard connector. Go ahead and squeeze them. The look on Stace's face as the connector simply fell off into his hand was great. Samuel had shown Askel a scene from a popular action film Stace definitely would have seen, where a huge spike of a plug was shoved into the base of the character's skull. This was, thankfully, nothing like that. It's magnetically attached. You can see all the little sensor pads on the end. Stace examined the flat end of the cable and its dozens of tiny golden dots. It's for checking the status of your new organs. Like a less invasive version of the old medical scanner. New organs. Stace was fingering the hard, purple disc that replaced his old medical port. Don't worry about that diagnostic pad. Once you're a bit more settled, we can have it replaced with a... Askel took a moment to look at the list of English words he had prepared on his omnipad for this conversation. Subdermal version. You won't even be able to see it. Stace nodded. So, new organs. How much of me is me? He was trying to hold it in, be stoic, but Askel could see the fear there. First off, you're not a gear child or a... He consulted his pad again. A Terminator, Replicant, Skitra 2, Shrike, Rat Thing, Guyver, Robocop, Tech Priest, or Iron Man. Where the hell did you get that list? Sammy. I only recognized maybe a third of it. Stace seemed to freeze for a second, then had a look of panic. Why? He took a deep breath, tried to calm down. Why am I talking better? Askel held up his hands and tried to put soothing tones in his voice. Nobody has done anything with your brain. You were in a medically induced coma for the last 10 days while your prostheses tuned themselves. Plenty of time for the medications to take care of the brain damage you had from the cold. You're probably always going to have some problems when you get overly stressed, but aside from that your brain is all healed. Stace looked down at the blanket on his lap. The missing lower leg and foot were obvious. We haven't done anything there. I have some ideas about it I would like to talk to you about, but first you have a lot of physical therapy. After weeks in bed you will need quite a bit of exercise. So, again? No dancing around the question. How much? Askel took a moment to look at Ella and Ieng. Both nodded. You have a prosthetic heart, lungs, liver, gallbladder, kidneys, pancreas, and spleen. Stace started to shiver, breathing rapidly. Ieng and Ella both wrapped their arms around the human, stroking his back, talking to him softly. Stace, it's important that you remember something. These are prostheses. They aren't fancy new cyborg organs, not crazy computers that are going to take you over. They are like organ transplants you would get from a dead person back in the old days, just manufactured instead. You're hyperventilating right now, but you're doing it with regular lungs that work just like your old lungs. That heart is beating. Go ahead, check. Stace put 2 fingers to his neck and slowly seemed to calm down, not quite relax but lose his panic. It feels a little slow. It pumps a little more efficiently, and your new lungs transfer more oxygen into your blood. It doesn't have to squeeze as often, but it's doing the same thing. Askel took a moment to remind himself that Stace is a biologist. Hopefully how interesting the whole thing was would alleviate some of the shock. Each synthetic organ does what your old one did in a very similar way. All the parts are there, they are just made of a different material and powered differently. That's reassuring. I don't know why. It's nice to know I still have kidneys, I guess. Are they still shaped like giant beans? They are the same shape as human kidneys since they have to fit in the same place. That got a nod from the human. He seemed to be calming down, less panicked, more thoughtful. Power. Stace looked at the cable that had attached him to the medical scanner. How long do my batteries last? How much time to recharge? Can I get a longer cable? Those are good questions, and the simple answer is that you don't need to worry about it. You should never need to plug back into recharge. That doesn't make any sense. Askel put on his best smug grin. Oh, did they cover alien replacement organs in college? That got him a matching grin. All right, you little grey asshole. Explain it. Asshole. Well, maybe now I shouldn't. If there was one thing Askel was good at, it was faux indignation. Okay, you win. How many D cells do I take, and where's the cover to replace them? I don't know what a D cell is, but you do have a backup power cell behind your lungs, next to your heart. It's about the size of... Askel checked his notes. Samuel had given him a relatable comparison to use. A roll of quarters, whatever that is. It gets charged automatically, but it will charge faster if we hook you up to this medical scanner. Stace started to say something, but Askel raised a hand. Let me finish. You can ask questions after the lecture. The reason the power cell is a backup is that you have 3 redundant power systems. The first and main one is your lungs. You have your regular diaphragm, and whenever you breathe, the expansion and compression of your lungs generates electricity to power the system. This gets put into your power cell if it's low, but also powers everything else. Secondary power comes from your body heat. You're an endotherm, so you constantly produce extra heat that each organ can use to power themselves independently. It does mean that you might get cold more easily, but still nothing like me. The third and more of an emergency backup is peristalsis. We will go over all the shill versions of these words, by the way. Your digestive system is still all original, and there's a net of mechanical generators around your intestines that generate power from the movement as you digest. It doesn't generate nearly as much as the other two, but if something horrible somehow happened, it can keep you alive all on its own. Stace thought it over. Lots of backup. I like it. It's really unusual to put all three in. What do you remember about the night of the attack? I remember seeing you and Iing, something about Sam and someone trying to kill me, that's about it. Stace frowned. Did you save my life? He did. Iing nodded. When your hacked medical dispenser tried to kill you, he realized the problem and unplugged it right away, then grabbed Nurse Joe so she could help too. Iing saved your life, really? When I was grabbing Joe, he started doing chest compressions. Kept blood moving until we could zap your heart. Oh. And don't forget Samuel. He's the one who got a new scanner working to keep you alive until the doctor got there. Ella beamed. Askel nodded. And Dr. Rico was basically a one-woman trauma team after we told her that she pissed off Agent Chelza. Jill. Stace thought for a moment. She was there. Askel flushed a little. I called her when we figured out what happened. She couldn't be there, but she sent Keller and a squad of Death's Head commandos to secure the site. Chelza was on the phone and Dr. Rico hung up on her so she wouldn't get distracted. When we explained who it was, we tried to call back, but her ship had gone into phase and nobody could contact her for days. Stace shook his head back and forth. This is too confusing. Can somebody just give me a list of who saved my life so I can thank them? And what does this have to do with having 3 power sources? Keller Chelza is Jelsai's sister-in-law. She's a famous soldier and, honestly, pretty terrifying. Jelsai had her come to protect you, and Keller made sure the surgeons knew that, in no uncertain terms, you were going to get the best of whatever they had in stock. There were commandos in the surgical theatre ready to shoot anybody who tried to kill you or screwed anything up. The only reason you don't have a bunch of military hardware in your chest is that Iing explained that you wanted to be as human and as independent as possible long term. The military stuff would have been better but has to be replaced more often. Your prostheses are good for at least 80 Earth years before needing maintenance. 3 power sources, because if you decided to go live in the woods again you won't need to bring anything extra. I don't think. Stace took a moment to look at Ella and Iing. I don't think my family would let me do that again. But I like that I can go on vacation without having to drag a generator around. Why the power cell, though? It's another backup, sort of. It provides extra power in case you are in a high-stress situation. Let's say you run a marathon, everything has to work harder, and, if you somehow outpace your generators, everything keeps working. You finish your marathon, sit down for dinner, and accidentally drink a bottle of poison instead of water. Your new liver takes care of it for you, but it has to work harder so it draws power from the cell. If the power cell starts to get too low, you'll know it because your new pancreas will release some drugs that will make you tired. If you keep pushing it, you'll get a dose of sleepy time chemicals so you can rest and everything can recharge. That will likely never happen, though. So what happened to me at the hospital? Can't happen again. If we pumped you full of those exact same drugs, you'd get sleepy and wake up the next day feeling fine. Stace held his arms out. Thank you, Askel. I know I will have to adjust, but it isn't as bad as I thought. Now you need another hug. The Helcom accepted gleefully. Jelsai, read the message again. For the fourth time. The entire time the ship had been in phase, heading from Earth to the Shilvati home world so Jelsi could present that unbelievable cunt Celia Merrick to a tribunal. Jelsi had been in a state of panic. Stace was dying. Maybe dead. She had no way to know. Whoever had hung up on her was going to pay dearly. What was he to her, anyway? She liked him, but it wasn't like he was her. Jelsi had never really given it much thought. When she had first saw Stace, she saw someone who needed help, a little male who had been hurt bad, abused, and just needed to be protected. But how far did that go? The message from Keller had arrived a couple days after their ship got out of phase. She began reading, ecstatic to learn that her little Stace had managed to survive. He had needed a lot of work, but Jelsi didn't care about that. She would keep him alive and happy and apparently she had been acting like a dumb, entitled bitch this whole time. Stace wasn't an abused, disabled pet who had been abandoned in the woods and needed a firm, loving hand to take charge of his life. He was an incredibly intelligent and cunning human whose life she had fucked up because she never actually thought to ask him what he wanted. She had made a lot of bad assumptions and took charge, deciding what was best for him and just doing them. It was just the sort of thing you would expect a noble to do. Or an interior agent. Just the sort of shit Celia Merrick would have done if she had taken a liking to Stace instead of Samuel. Jelsi could see it so clearly in her mind, Celia seeing the battered human who had no idea what was going on, pulling some strings to get him put on medical stewardship with Celia being in charge of him. Doing a good deed, of course. Helping this poor human. Owning him. Jelsi had done the same thing. She had idly even thought of being his caretaker, but she had too much work to do. She had fantasized about helping him slowly recover, nursing the poor guy back to health, and what? Where would that lead? If he was a pet, not really sentient, it would be a wonderful life for him. But for Stace, a real person, trapped in a situation he couldn't understand, it would have been a living nightmare. The thought that Jelsi could have done such a terrible act of abuse, had wanted to do something like that, not realizing the damage, had made her sick. It had taken the joy out of watching Celia get brought before a tribunal. Instead of watching with glee as the prosecution team tore that cunt's entire life apart, Jelsi spent the entire time worried and deeply shamed. No, she would have to fix this somehow. Jelsi liked Stace. It was important to her that he liked her as well, but after this the best she could probably hope for was a slap in the face. Not that he would do that. She was a noble and Stace was a nobody. He was clever enough not to antagonize her, because if she could take away his freedom while trying to be nice she could be so much worse if she decided to be mean. Jelsi tossed her pad down and ran to the bathroom. She managed to make it to the toilet before she began heaving. What she had done, what she had considered doing. It went against her own principles and those of her house. Jelsi had abused her power and destroyed someone's life. That was a line she had told herself she would never cross. But she had. And what made it even worse was that it was a person she had liked. Felt. Something towards. No, Jelsi would have to face the firing squad and talk to Stace. Confront a man that she had treated like a toy, tit up and apologize. Then she would stand there and accept his ire, his hate. She would be professional. She would let it happen, and when she was done she would never see Stace again. Jelsi leaned away from the toilet, back against the wall. She was a monster. Face in her hands, investigator for the interior Jelsi Chelza began to cry. End of chapter. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss any episode and do all the other YouTube stuff. Visit and support the author, and I'll see you next time. If you didn't enjoy, comment on what I can do better. And as usual, have a wonderful day.